Hey guys, welcome back to In Shannon's Kitchen. Today we're going to be making sesame balls, which are a classic Chinese dessert. It has a crisp and chewy mochi shell filled with a sweet and creamy red bean filling, and this one just has a touch of pumpkin for that seasonal fall twist. So I recommend that you first start by making your red bean paste just because it takes some time to cook and then cool down. So try to get your hands on some dried red adzuki beans, which you can find at most Asian supermarkets or online, and you want to cook them just like you would any other dried bean. So go ahead and place them into a small saucepan along with some water, place it over high heat, and put a lid on your pot. That way it comes to a very vigorous rolling boil pretty quickly. And once it comes to a rolling boil, just like what you see there, you want to drop that heat down to about medium or so, just so it's not so aggressively boiling, and you just have a few large bubbles that rise to the surface. And the idea here is when you're cooking dried beans, you want it to absorb most of that water. That's why it's important to keep the lid on your pot. And then once it's done cooking and it absorbs most of the water and cooks all the way through, you should be able to mash it with the back of a spoon against the pot. And I'm just using a larger pitcher here, or a deeper pitcher rather. That way I can just blend it using a stick blender and it doesn't splatter all over the place. But you could alternatively use a regular blender or a food processor. Basically just get those beans blended until you have a nice smooth bean puree on your hands. So once you have a smooth red bean puree on your hands, which I realize now that I say it out loud doesn't sound very appetizing for dessert, but not to worry, we're going to add a quarter cup or 50 grams of granulated white sugar, place that pot over medium heat, and you want to cook this over medium heat, stirring all the while just to prevent it from burning. And you'll notice as soon as you add that sugar, it's going to be kind of strange. All of a sudden there's a lot of liquid in the pan, it gets very loose and thin. But that's because sugar actually binds water, if you will, or holds onto water. So you want to make sure you let this mixture simmer, stirring all the while to prevent it from burning until it becomes nice and thick and most of that water has evaporated. It should only take, I would say, a few minutes or so over medium heat. And at this point, I refrigerated my bean paste. That way it's safer to handle and I can roll it in between two hands, and you can see how much it's solidified there, sitting in the fridge. Most of the starches from the beans have absorbed most of the moisture. And it's really thickened up, and you basically just want to roll it out into 1 teaspoon size balls. That way you can easily fill your sesame balls later. Alright, so now that we have our red bean balls all prepared and ready to go, we're going to move on to our pumpkin mochi. So I'm just taking some glutinous rice flour, adding it straight into a bowl, along with some light brown sugar. And try not to mistakenly pour in like 2 cups of light brown sugar. It's only going to be a quarter cup or 55 grams. I just kind of did a pre-stir there just to make sure that there's no large clumps of light brown sugar before I added the rest of the ingredients. So once I broke up the little granules of light brown sugar, I'm adding my pumpkin puree. Just make sure you're using pure pumpkin puree. Use something that's quality as well, because different brands will vary depending on the quality of pumpkin. So I like to use Trader Joe's brand, not sponsored, but you know, Trader Joe's addict, so might as well be sponsored. No, kidding. Or you can use Libby's, you can use fresh pumpkin puree if you're really feeling it, but you know, the canned stuff, depending on the brand that you get, is perfectly high quality. So go ahead and just stir it around, and depending on also your glutinous rice flour, how it's stored, it just kind of varies in terms of how much moisture it will absorb. So I'll give you the quantities here in the description box below, so that's where the recipe will be, all the details, but you know, you do have to kind of play it by ear and just observe your dough. So once I added my pumpkin puree, it felt still a little bit dry to me, so I just added some water. So I had 1 tablespoon ready to go and just add in as I needed it, but I added like 1 teaspoon and then maybe another half teaspoon or so because I felt it was still just a touch dry, you know. So it does take some experience making it, I would say, but just kind of observe it. Basically, as long as you can kind of roll it out into a ball form and it doesn't crack on you, then you know it's ready to go. So once you rolled out your little logs, I'm just going to tear it into 10 even-sized pieces, and to make sure that they're nice and even and precise, I do recommend that you use a scale and just weigh each of them. It should be roughly about 25 to 30 grams per ball of dough. So this part is pretty quick and simple. You want to take each piece of dough and just roll it in between two hands to get a nice round sphere. Flatten that sphere on your work surface. And I do like to pick up each piece of dough and just go around the edges, just pinching those edges to make sure it's even thickness all the way around. And then this part is pretty self-explanatory. You take each red bean ball, place it straight in the center, and just encase the whole thing. Make sure it's sealed completely so there's no red bean that's exposed and could potentially leak into your fryer. And then just roll it around in your hands to get a nice round ball. And just place that ball into some sesame seeds. I'm using just white untoasted, make sure it's untoasted or unroasted, whatever it is, sesame seeds. You can use black sesame seeds even if you want a nice orange and black theme. Perfect for Halloween actually, so maybe next year. And just carry on, just go ahead and roll each little sesame ball till you're all done. And now let's fast forward. I already rolled all my little sesame balls and they're all ready to go straight into the deep fryer. So I don't fry things usually just because it's not very healthy and it just creates a big mess. But when you do fry things, make sure that you have a thermometer of some sort. So like a candy thermometer is what I'm using. And just make sure it's at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius. And just gently place your ball straight into the deep fryer. I'm just using a couple cups of oil here in a medium-sized saucepan. No need to use a whole like Dutch oven. I just do it in 2 batches, like usually 5 per batch because it makes 10 total sesame balls. Again, these are small sesame balls, but yeah, usually 5 fit in my pot here. So go ahead and just fry them for about 5 to 7 minutes. Doesn't take very long. And do make sure to stir them as they're frying just to make sure they're evenly coated in that oil so they're getting nice and golden brown all the way around. And I can't stress enough, anytime you're frying anything, you want to make sure the temperature of your oil is correct. So if it's too cold, your food will end up just absorbing all that oil and being too greasy. But if your oil is too hot, your food will actually burn on the outside and not cook all the way through. So definitely, if you have it, use that candy thermometer. So once your sesame balls are all done cooking, after about 7 minutes or so, just go ahead and remove them from the oil. You can see they're nice and golden brown and crispy and not too greasy because again, we're monitoring the temperature of our oil. I just love how chewy and crisp it is straight out of the fryer. And again, that creamy, sweet red bean filling is so delicious. And I went light on the red bean filling here, but you could definitely like use more if you like. It's up to you. So definitely give this a try. Let me know in the comments below what you think, as well as any future recipe suggestions. Don't forget to subscribe for new recipes every week, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye.